بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وإمام المرسلين سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا تعويل وجعلنا من خيرة أمة سيدنا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. We seek Allah's protection from knowledge that does not benefit, from a heart that has no khushu, from a nafs that's never had enough, from an eye that does not tear, from a dua that's not heard. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we continue our lessons. Actually today I'm on the roof because the electricity is gone, so there's not kind of good light. So although the light is kind of, the sun is down now, it's after Asr now. So we'll try to finish. Maybe by the time we finish it gets all dark, but we'll continue inshallah. As we do, we start off by speaking about the people of Palestine. We ask you to, everyone, please remember them in your du'as. Continue to remember their du'as. Continue raise your voices for them, and that's important. Don't get this kind of fatigue. We've had enough. That's enough. Now we've done as much as possible. Just continue raising the voice, and it is working. You can say to some extent that the narrative, the narrative that comes about, people are kind of seeing the truth. So please remember them in your dua. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for them, ease their suffering. So please do remember them in dua. So like I said, I'm on the rooftop today. Last week was it some complaints that I didn't kind of really show any of the view. So let's start off by showing a bit of the view. Then we'll continue with the lessons. So here we go. Hopefully everyone can see clearly. So as you can see, that there, see all that there. I've been very straight, but anyway, yeah, there you go. So that's kind of far back there is Indian occupied Kashmir, but obviously this side, but there's Azad Kashmir here, but you probably can't see because there's a lot of kind of mist. As we come back around, you probably remember a few years back, was it a couple of years, that plane that was shot down from Indian side, just over that on a little, say, mountain that fell there. That's where it fell. So right close to us. Okay, so there's our local masjid. There you go. Okay, so yeah, there you go. There's your kind of view, and the light is kind of going down, as you can see. So let's see. We'll kind of continue how much we can get through. Okay, so hopefully there you go. There's the view. Let's continue. So I've come because my father's not well. My grandmother's not well also. So I'm make the journey. So please remember them in your du'as. Okay, so okay, so last week we spoke about the migrant. Also apologies for if there's a bit of an issue with the sound. Obviously it's quite windy. But yeah, we'll try our best. Okay, so we spoke about the migrants from Abyssinia, the marriage of the Prophet ﷺ to our mother Habiba, and as well as his marriage to our mother Safiya. May Allah be pleased with them. Events after Khaybar, including what we spoke about last week, events around Maria al-Qibtiyah. Okay. Now I just want to kind of clarify a point because one of the students kind of raised it. So last week when I was going through the surah at the start of the surah Tahrim, I mentioned that I mentioned the first surah. I mentioned the first ayah, and you may have come across that I was kind of linking the Prophet ﷺ agreeing to not visit Maria on the request of his wife to the first ayah. That wasn't my intention. kind of the surah is revealed immediately after the events according to some, but there are kind of difference of opinion which incident the first ayah is referring to. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that point. Also, I did mention that I'm going to show you the location where the Prophet ﷺ would go and where Maria lived. So give me one sec here. Okay. So this is known as Mushrabat Ibrahim. So where it's believed that the son of the Prophet ﷺ, Ibrahim, was born. One sec. Okay, so if you look like bottom right is the location, and I just kind of showed that view so you can see it in relation to Masjid al-Nabawi, how far out it was. So it's kind of on the outskirts of Medina, well, kind of far out, that the Prophet ﷺ agreed to. Is a few more images. So this is an old picture of it. Okay, that's an old picture of the location. Again, it was a masjid there, and this is a kind of more recent picture which I just kind of zoomed in from Google Maps to show the local location. So I did say, like I said, I'll show this. So there's that point. Okay, so let's continue then. Inshallah, today, linking it to last week as well. Then you also have the and this is where some say the ayah kind of some of them the ayah later on referring to the incident of honey. And I didn't mention it. I just thought I kind of brushed over it a bit, but so it was a case. I'll mention it now since we've kind of talked about clarification. But the Prophet ﷺ would have this honey that was given to him, and to kind of distance him from the incident, the wives, and I think specifically it was saying Aisha and Hafsa said that will say to him that the honey makes your kind of breath smell, so don't have it, and I think, and that's when he said, okay, I won't have it. But yeah, that's kind of just a few points on that. Okay, so if we move on, then we're speaking about today we're going to speak about, well, some people converting to Islam after coming to Medina. So after Huraira events, etc., and all that. Specifically today, we're going to speak about one of the most prominent of these kind of converts was Sayyidina Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhu. His actual name was Abdul Rahman ibn Dawsi al-Sakhr. He came with his tribe. He was named Abu Huraira because, like the Prophet ﷺ said, he loved kittens. Now there are a number of narrations about the Prophet ﷺ, good treatment of cats, and there are equally, as it happens, narrations about the Prophet ﷺ good treatment of dogs. So anyway, there are a number of kind of narrations about cats, and Sayyid Abu Huraira loved cats. Okay, and hence why he was nicknamed that. Now there are some, so kind of before he came to Medina, he was a shepherd. Okay, he was an orphan. He would carry out what narration is that he said he would carry this small small kitten in his sleeve, and kind of he was given this nickname Abu Huraira. Now there are some narration that this was by his tribe, but some that it was later on given by the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, but anyway, that was his name. That's kind of his nickname given to him. Now he was one of the most prominent, and kind of he became one of the most prominent of the Ashab al-Sufa, so who we have discussed in detail at the start of the Medina period, the immigrants who came to Medina with nothing, who were the kind of guests of the Prophet ﷺ, who stayed in the kind of portico, at the back of the Masjid Nabawi, until they managed to get on their feet and start earning for themselves and so forth. Okay, so he was the kind of the leader of the Ahl Sufa. Okay, so let's just quickly kind of show you. I might have shown this before, but let's just show you again. So far, some kind of location, well, a picture of it basically. And I think what happens is that previously I've prayed there. I've sit there and you read the Quran, and at the front as well. But now kind of they've blocked it all off for that, and I think mainly now it's for for the women to enter, and they come around from this direction, especially when they're coming to Riyadh al Jannah. Okay, that's my understanding. Okay, this is an old picture, but still, yeah, like I said, previously, before kind of COVID, etc., this whole place would be open and people would come and sit on all of this place. You know, I still remember sitting there and spending a long time there, you know, reading Quran, Nafal, etc., you know, prayer. But now it's kind of blocked off. I think it's more for women now, women area. Okay, so that's the location. Okay, so Sayyidina Abu Hurairah decides that he would spend his life with the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, and so he was kind of, which I suppose you might say it's like a full-time student. He did not marry, and he didn't get a job during that period. Okay, he remained in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, and he would accompany him from that time. He would accompany the Prophet ﷺ throughout whenever he could accompany. Okay, and he is of course the greatest of the hadith narrators. Okay, and again, I can't, like a giant in terms of the hadith narrations, etc. I'm not going to be able to do it justice in the whatever half an hour we're going to speak about him, but you would have all heard of him. You know, I'd be surprised if you've gone through a few hadiths and you've not heard the name. Okay, you know, if you've covered any hadiths, like there's bound to be one that started off with his name. Okay, so he was the kind of the greatest among the narrators of the hadith. Over 5,000, around, I think it was probably around 5,300, around about there. Okay, so over 5,000 hadiths in the 6 kind of great works of hadith are from Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radhiyallahu anhu. And kind of then, just to kind of put it into context, the next kind of Sahaba on that list is Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar, and his narration is something around like 2,600, around about there. Okay, so Sayyidina Abu Hurairah reported kind of twice as many hadiths as the next Sahaba. Then I think you have Anas ibn Malik, which was around about the 2,000 mark again. And then you have our mother Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha, and which again is around the 2,000 mark. And then you have Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, which kind of drops a bit down to around about the 1,500 mark. Okay, I'm just looking around this one, but just in case they look a bit hungry. Never mind. I can always just stop it. You won't realize what had happened. Actually, if I stop it, I'll have to start again, but never mind. So he specialized in hadith. Okay, he was a handsome man. Some kind of descriptions of him are, you know, having a red beard. He was a man of humor. Okay, this is one of the things that was kind of, he was a man of humor. He would entertain people. You know, play around with the kids in Medina. You know, they would kind of he'd run around with the kids in Medina. They chase him. When they touch him, he would kind of play dead. Okay, he'd play dead, and then when he would only awake when they kind of read some Quran over him. Okay, when you wake him up by reading Quran over him, and then he would jump up and start reading the Kalma. Okay, much later on, when he would kind of walk, when he would pick up his own like wood, etc., he would go like this, and it comes through, and he's just telling people, "Oh, watch out, I'm coming through." So he was one of those kind of humorous guys and entertaining people. Okay, everyone loved him. Okay, everyone loved him. So the narration is of him kind of coming to Medina the day the Prophet ﷺ left for Haibar. Okay, he even narrates the surahs he recited in the 2 rakats he prayed in Medina, his kind of first 2 rakats. Okay, so he came with his servant and mother. His mother was blind, but his servant kind of fled beforehand. So his mother kind of goes everywhere with him. Okay, her name was Maimuna. Maimuna means blessing. Okay, Mubarakah. So he sets her up at Zul Khulaifa. Okay. So the story around his mother. So first of all, when he came and he set her up there, he mentioned to his mother he's become a Muslim, and and she wasn't really pleased with it. Okay, she kind of almost like cursing him, and why would do that, and kind of cursing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he goes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says that, he was upset because his mother is kind of cursing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he says, you can make dua for her. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam raises his hands and makes dua for her. And he gets really happy. A dua made by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam will not be turned down. So he returns back to his mother. And as he's about to enter the house, his mother kind of shouts out, "Don't enter!" As he's opening the door, "Don't enter!" This is how the kind of narration comes about. She says, "Don't enter," and then because she had just had a ghusl and she was putting on the kind of clothes or putting veil, whatever. And then she goes, "Now you may enter." And when he enters, the first words she says to him are the shahada, okay, the testification that, and she says, she's become Muslim, and he's kind of so happy, he's overwhelmed. He goes back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam out of joy that my mother has become a Muslim, because he was really happy. Imagine this, that how many narrations he has, what he's done, etc. But yet he's got that, because he's so close to his mother. Surely he wants his mother to become Muslim, because he knows that to become Muslim and all that. So yeah, so that was kind of the story around his mother. So it's actually narrated that he didn't do Hajj or marry until his mother passed away. Okay. Anyway, so to kind of the backdrop of Sayyidina Abu Huraira, it comes around by from someone by the name of Sayyidina Tufail ibn Amr. He was kind of the chief of the tribe of Al-Daws, the tribe that Abu Huraira was from. And this tribe was famous for all the wrong things. It's drinking, partying, riba, zina, etc. All of this, they were known for the wrong things. Okay, and kind of this story is around about the time. So this is in Mecca, kind of from the early period of Mecca, when obviously the Prophet ﷺ announced his prophethood. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ announced his prophethood. I'm sorry, I was just phone call comes through. That's my mind. Okay, so this was around about that time. What happened is that the Quraysh would all go to. So when people would come for the pilgrimage, okay, the Quraysh would, remember we spoke about the Quraysh then decided, the only way to stop people is warn them about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's a sorcerer. Don't listen to him. He's going to put you under his magic, etc. and all that, and this is what they did for this, Tufail ibn Umar, because he was a chief. He was chief of the tribe. When he came, they kind of scared him, because he really cared about his family. He really cared about his tribe and the kind of close connection. So they said to him, "Oh, he's a sorcerer, and you got to be wary of him, because what he does is he destroys your tribe. He divides your family. Okay, he divides your family." So then Tufail thought, what? No, I don't want that. I don't want that. I'm so close to my family. So what he decided to do when he went to the Kaaba, he put cotton in his ears so he could not hear the Prophet ﷺ, because he saw the Prophet ﷺ. He was there on the side. He was reciting, and he thought, "So I can't hear him." He put cotton in his ears. Okay. But then he decided, what? I'm an educated person. Surely he can't fool me. So he decided to take the cotton and listen to what the Prophet ﷺ had to say. And and he heard, he went to the Prophet ﷺ to listen to what he's reciting, and he was so beautiful, and he overcome by this. Okay, so he becomes a Muslim. And then what he does is he goes back to his people. Okay, and he even offers the Prophet ﷺ. He goes, "Look, come back with me to my tribe. We'll protect you, etc." Okay, but he decides to go back and goes, "I'll go back and check on my people. Let's see how they are. Let's see if they become Muslim as well." Okay, because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Are you sure that they will follow you?" So he goes, "Let me go back." He went back, and actually before he's going back, he asked the Prophet ﷺ to make dua for him. Okay, make dua for him for a miracle. And he was known as the possessor of light, okay, because then when the Prophet ﷺ made dua for him, when he went back to his tribe, there was light coming from his forehead, okay, and then he kind of made dua that he was worried because he thought the people will not understand, and they're going to think, oh look, he's being punished because he's left our religion, he's left the old, he left the idols. So he made dua that the light get removed from there and get moved to a different place, and that light was then that moved from his forehead to his stick. Okay, like similar to Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. And this is the karmat of the people of Allah. It's like wherever they come about, obviously not as much as a prophet, but they still continue to come about these miracles. Okay. So what happens is his family becomes Muslim, seeing the light, and after what he says, etc. His father's old, mother's old, they become Muslim. Okay. He called this tribe to Islam, and all reject except for a handful. And one of those was a young poor shepherd. His name was Abd Shams, slave of the sun. This was actually who? Abu Huraira. Okay, so that was his name before. And the Prophet ﷺ gave him the name of Abdul Rahman. So those reject the religion, as they didn't want to the reason why they rejected it is they did not want to stop their their ways, partying, drinking and all that. They thought, what, we have to leave all that, no chance. So that's why they rejected it. Okay. And he continues, continues, but he struggles. Then he goes back to the Prophet ﷺ with his family and this orphan. And Tufail tells the Prophet ﷺ, what, make dua for them. I've given up on them. Okay, destroy them. Allah Ta'ala destroy them. I've made dua for make dua against them. The Prophet ﷺ raises his hands. His hands go up, but he makes dua that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala guides those and bring them to bring them to me. Okay. The Prophet ﷺ told Tufail to go back to his people. So he goes, be gentle with them and call them to Allah. Allah is gentle and love gentleness, and Allah gives through gentleness that He doesn't give through harshness. And the reason, obviously, I'm mentioning this is because with him, when he came to the Prophet ﷺ, was who? A young Abu Huraira. Okay, a young Abu Huraira. That's when he first came across the Prophet ﷺ, and he looked at him and said, I didn't know good people come from that tribe also. Okay, so that was it, Abu Huraira. And again, that's one of the nations in terms of that's when he became a Muslim, when he was young. So coming forward, then actually, so Abu Huraira had an unusual gift. It was that he had a strong memory. Okay, and he was skilled in the art of listening and preserving what he heard. He would listen, understand, and memorize. He would hardly forget one word for the rest of his life. Okay, that is why he was able to memorize and narrate more prophetic traditions than any of the companions of the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So we so often hear a when the masjid, the imam, khatib, they talk, when they giving this the khutbah, they use some common expressions narrated by Abu Huraira. The Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, when we hear his name in that form, read it repeatedly in books, it's important to know that you're mentioning a companion with one of the the most interesting characters. Okay, his ability to listen was beyond compare. He memorized countless traditions and wise instruction from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, thanks to his gift. At that time there was a need to preserve everything. Okay, there were not many scribes, and you need to have free time, etc. But Abu Huraira, he was not a scribe himself, but he learned things by heart. Okay, he had the necessary free time to invest in such projects. He decided, I'm not going to go business, etc. This is I'm going to focus my time, because he believed that he came to Islam late and he had a lot of making up, catching up to do. So he's lost a lot of time. So he needs to make it all up. So he spent as much time as possible beside the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay. Now, besides he himself knew that the gift of Allah had bestowed on him. He's broad. His retentive memory, which only became stronger after the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam invoked Allah's blessings upon him. Okay, so he devoted himself and his memory to memorizing the hadiths, etc. Okay, now the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave him three advices. Okay? He told him, never to leave them. Okay, and one was fast 3 days of the month, pray 2 rakat of duha, okay, and pray with it before going to sleep. Okay, when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, Abu Huraira kind of kept narrating his traditions. This kind of made some companions wonder, wait a minute, what's going on here? How can you just say, I heard this, I heard this, I heard this. How do you know so many hadiths? When did you hear them? And Sayyidina Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu said to them, he said to them, well, when he's defending himself, he says, you guys were busy. He says that the Muhajirin or preceding, etc. Everyone was busy. You guys were busy with your contracts in the markets, etc. And kind of the Ansar were busy with their lands. I was a poor man, always sitting with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I was present when they were absent, and I memorized. I memorized it. I memorized if they forgot. Okay. And one narration by a companion was that people should take narrations from Abu Huraira as he kind of as we take from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, morning and evening only. Okay, then we get busy in our world, our livelihood, but he takes it all day. Okay, he takes it all day. And there's one incident actually. Some of the young companions in the masjid making dhikr, dua, etc. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes and tells them to continue. They're all making dua, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, Ameen. And I look at the intelligence of Sayyidina Abu Huraira. He asked for kind of, when they're all kind of making dua, he asks for whatever the others have asked for, and a knowledge that will never be forgotten. Okay, and the Prophet ﷺ said, Ameen. Okay, then the others kind of asked for the same thing. They said, can we have that as well? And the Prophet ﷺ said that he's beaten you to it. Okay, he has beaten you to it. Now, one day the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever kind of spreads his garment until I finish my speech, then collects it to his chest, will never forget what I have said. Now there's another narration with the common narration, so I brought on board in whether it's the same one or like a different variation of the same one or a different one. Regardless, if I brought both the narrations in. So this is a particular one that he says in this way. And then Abu Huraira therefore he goes, I spread my clothes, and the Prophet ﷺ directed his speech to me. Then I collected it. By Allah, I never forgot what he said to me later on. Okay, so that's kind of one of the narrations, and this is the way kind of he explained his unique ability to narrate so many hadiths. Okay, firstly, kind of he had the time to accompany the Prophet ﷺ, more than anyone else, and secondly, he had a kind of strong memory, blessed by the Messenger, so he became stronger. Thirdly, he did not narrate because he was kind of fond of narrating, but because spreading those traditions was his responsibility. Okay, he didn't want to be a kind of concealer of good, nor would he became negligent of his duties. Okay, so for these reasons he kept narrating. Kind of nothing could stop him or hinder him from narrating. Okay, even later on, much later on, when Sayyidina Umar told everyone to stop, and I've mentioned this before as well, Sayyidina Umar told everyone to stop with the narrations after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. He wanted to encourage Muslims to read and memorize. Okay, like read and memorize nothing but the Quran, so that it would settle in their hearts and minds. Also, kind of, I mentioned that especially when the Quran was being compiled, it was necessary to ensure there was no kind of confusion between Quran and Hadith. Okay, so Umar would say, narrate little. You also kind of narrate little, but narrate as much that one can be followed, that it can be followed. Okay, but he still continued. Abu Huraira kind of had his point. When Umar sent Abu Musa al-Ashri to Iraq, he said to him, you're going to people where you can hear the sound of the Quran in their mosques, as if you were a drone of bees. He goes, let them do what they're doing. Don't kind of occupy them with tradition. He said, look, they're doing what they're doing is good. Don't occupy them with traditions. However, Sayyidina Abu Huraira kind of appreciated Sayyidina Umar's point of view, but he was also sure of himself and his honesty, and he did not want to kind of conceal anything of the tradition or knowledge. So he continued with his narrations. Okay, so whenever he found a chance to unload the traditions he had heard or understood from his best, he did so. Okay, he did so. Now there's a event narrated once that Marwan ibn al-Hakam, he was the governor of Medina later on, much later on. He wanted to kind of examine Sayyidina Abu Huraira's memorizing, his ability. So what did Marwan do is he invited him to sit with him, and he asked, I think this, I'm just trying to think honestly, must have been at least 30, 40 years after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. But I can't remember the date, but that's what's come to my mind. So he called Sayyidina Abu Huraira, and he made him sit down, and he says to him, kind of narrate about the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He didn't tell Sayyidina Abu Huraira, but he had some scribes sitting behind kind of screen, and he told the scribes to whatever Abu Huraira narrates, write it down. Okay, write it down. Then what happened is, after a year, he invites Sayyidina Abu Huraira again, and he asks him to narrate the same traditions, the same hadith that the scribes had recorded. And Abu Huraira did not forget, and he had not forgotten a single word. So he narrated it word to word. Okay, this is how amazing his memory was, his mind was. Okay. He used to say about himself that no one among the companions of the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam narrates about him more than I do, except Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. He used to. He said he used to write it, but I didn't. Okay, Imam Shafi, may Allah be pleased with him, said about him that no one in his period was more capable of narrating tradition with such a memory than Sayyidina Abu Huraira radhiyallahu anhu. Al-Bukhari, may Allah be pleased with him, said almost 800 or more companion, like followers, companions, tabi'in, and people of knowledge narrated through Sayyidina Abu Huraira. Okay, it was as if Sayyidina Abu Huraira was a school in himself. Okay, he was a hafiz of the Quran, a mufti of the companions. Okay, there's another miracle, and the miracle, this is again linked to the previous one. So what happens is, Abu Huraira comes to the Prophet ﷺ one day, and he says that, look, I hear so much from you. I'm with you all day, and I'm hearing so much from you. There are some things you say I forget. A few things you say I forget. So the Prophet ﷺ told him to take off his cloak. Okay, told him to take off his cloak, and then the Prophet ﷺ kind of starts making dua, and it was like he was pouring something into the cloak. Okay, then he tells him to wrap himself around with his cloak, and he goes, Abu Huraira says that I never forgot anything after that, not even a letter, harf, not even a letter. Okay. Once the Prophet ﷺ took his hand and told him, look, 5 things to act upon. So I held his hand, and he went like this, 5 things to act upon. Leave off haram. You'll be the greatest of worshippers. Be pleased with what. Be pleased with what Allah has given you, and you'll be the richest of people. Okay. Be good to your neighbor, and you'll be a true believer. Okay. Love for others what you love for yourself. You'll be a true Muslim. And don't be excessive with your laughter, as too much laughter kills the heart. So don't gonna go overboard where you're just kind of laughing all the time. Okay, because that's being excessive about it. Okay. Sayyidina Abu Huraira was a kind of diligent worshipper, and later on in life, the kind of narrations that come about when he marries, and he has a daughter, and what they do is they pray throughout the night. Okay, so what he would do is he would pray 1/3 of the night, his wife would pray another third of the night, and his daughter the other third. So it's a case of, as a family, they would be praying throughout the night. Okay, as a family, they'd be praying throughout the night. Okay, so not kind of 1 hour of the night passed in that Abu Huraira's house was without prayers. Okay. So his rank was so high that he led the janazah for some of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, even though Ibn Umar was around at that time. So okay, later on he was also made the governor. Okay, like I said, we won't go into too much about that. It's just more about current situations where we are at. Now, one of the kind of famous narrations of him going to the marketplace, the This is a famous narration where what happens is after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, he kind of rushes to the masjid. No, sorry, he goes to the marketplace and he says to people, what are you doing here? You know, the inheritance of the Prophet ﷺ is being distributed in the masjid, and you guys are all here. So people rush towards the masjid, thinking, oh, we're going to get something. Let's rush towards the masjid. And all they see is these kind of study circles almost, circles of kind of fiqh being taught or whatnot. And they said, oh, you're kind of pulling our leg, you're messing with us. And he says, no, this is the inheritance of the Prophet ﷺ, these kind of circles of teaching, etc. This is what it is truly. Okay? And so we will end on this kind of, in order to be kind of free to accompany the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he kind of endured the cruelty of hunger like no other. He used to talk about the times when hunger was so intense that he would tie a stone on his stomach and he kind of lay on his liver kind of side to kind of starve off the hunger. Okay, and he did so once in the mosque. He was like twisting and turning like this. He was in so much pain, and they thought kind of maybe it's like epileptic. He wasn't. Okay, it was not the case, but he suffered a lot of hunger, and that's what we're going to finish. We'll finish off on this story about the famous story that everyone must have heard, but it'd be good to finish off on this. So, Sayyidina Abu Huraira would. He was so hungry one of these days. He was so hungry, and he decides, what, the only way to do it is that he's going to. He places himself on the kind of road or like on a route that he knew the Sahaba will pass by. The famous Sahaba will pass by, and then when they look at him, they'll say to him, "Come along, we're going to feed you." He thought we'll come out with an excuse. Anyway, so he's standing there, and the first person that comes along he sees Sayyid Abu Bakr Siddiq radhiyallahu anhu. Sayyid Abu Bakr Siddiq's walking, head down, and he says, "Oh, opportunity." And he goes, "Yeah, Abu Bakr, can you?" He asked him just this question. He knew the answer, but he answered the question. So when he looks at him, he answers him. Then he'll get job done. He goes, "What do you say about this question?" Or whatever it was. And the narrations kind of vary, but one of them is that Sayyid Abu Bakr Siddiq answers a question without looking up, kind of keeps his head down, and then he continues. The other is kind of, he looked at him, answered him, he carries on walking. He goes, okay, that didn't work. Next that comes is Sayyidina Umar Farooq. He goes, yes, okay, here now, opportunity. And he asked him the same question. And Sayyidina Umar, again, various variations, he either kind of kept his head down and continued walking, or kind of he looked towards him and answered the question, and off he went. It's not happening. Okay, he stays there and he's really, really hungry. He's kind of, it's unbearable. And then who comes next? The Prophet ﷺ, best of creation. Okay, and he thought, yes, job done now. So the Prophet ﷺ is approaching, and then he tries his kind of ask question. The Prophet ﷺ looks at him, starts smiling. He already knew. Okay, he already knew. He starts smiling. He says, "Yeah, brother, come with me. Come with me." It's almost like, yeah, come on, let's go. And he goes into one of his wife's houses and says, "Have we got anything to eat or anything?" And we've got a bit of milk. They had a bit of milk, just a little bit, just about for one person, if anything. Okay. And the Prophet ﷺ says to Abu Huraira, "Go and call all the Ashab Sufa." So they're all poor and they need to be fed. He goes, "Go and call them. Go and call them." And he thought, great. He thought, look how much milk there is. On top of that, the Prophet ﷺ is telling him to call the rest of them. But anyway, he could not kind of say no to the Prophet ﷺ. So off he goes. He calls them all. They all come. And the Prophet ﷺ says to him, pour them in milk. Now pour them milk for them to have. Okay, so milk's one of those things that's considered both like food and drink. Okay. So he thought, what? It's probably going to be a case of I pour for one of them, and then the Prophet ﷺ will say, okay, now you have some. Okay, but no, he pours for one, then the other, and then obviously they go, and then the next batch comes. He just continues pouring, and amazingly, he's pouring, but the milk's not finishing. Okay, the milk's not finishing, so he continues. until they've all had it. Now it's just him and the Prophet ﷺ. And that's how he says it's just him and the Prophet ﷺ. And the etiquette is, the adab is that obviously he needs to give the Prophet ﷺ first, but still he's got it in the back of his mind, I'm hungry. Okay, I'm hungry. Okay? And the Prophet ﷺ says to him, drink, Abu Huraira. He goes, no, drink, Abu Huraira. So he has the milk for himself, because I drank the milk, and then I stopped, handed over to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ said, continue, drink more. He goes, then I drank more. I passed over to the Prophet ﷺ, but the Prophet ﷺ said, continue, drink more. Because then I drank as much as I could until I could not drink anymore. And then I passed to the Prophet ﷺ. I said, look, I can't have any more. That's it. And then the Prophet ﷺ took it and he had the drink. Okay, he took it and he had the drink. So, because small. So this is the kind of famous, that everyone's heard this story, and one of the miracles around that involves Sayyidina Abu Huraira. I mean, there's so much more that can be said about Sayyidina Abu Huraira, but we've kind of been concise and to the point, because there was a few other converts that I want to mention as well. So we'll continue that the following weeks. Inshallah, that's been helpful. And we leave it at that. And wa sallallahu sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim wa salli alayhi. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursalin. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.